Welcome back on the AM show. We get into our big stories now. The first one, well, government intends putting $500 million in the Ghana Financial Stability Fund. Now, the World Bank is committed to giving $250 million, which means government must cough up the remaining $750 million from external sources. We delve into this with Dr. Richmond Etuahene. He's a banking consultant. We also have joining the conversation Dr. Saad Idrisu, an economist with Louisiana Economic Development. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. I see you, Dr. Idrisu.
Good morning, Ben.
I hope you've been well.
Yeah.
Let's look at the very basics of this entire arrangement. The plan by government, the resources that the World Bank is committing to this cause, among other matters. What is your basic understanding of the reason for this fund in the first place and the mopping up of resources to set it up?
Thank you so much, Ben. Before I dwell into the matter, I just need to take 1 minute of the time to just air this out. I'm very saddened, or some of us are very saddened, that at the time that Ghanaians are expecting the NDC to be in a better position to take up the challenges in 2025, it's like each time that we are supposed to be focusing on national issues, the NDC miraculously takes over the center stage of the news in a negative manner. I think it is very unfortunate. You know, we saw the case of the Haruna incidents, the Haruna saga, which was just blew up the whole nation, and what is happening with 2-4 now. I think it's very sad because Ghanaians expect the NDC to form the next government, and some of these stuff happening could actually make Ghanaians to lose confidence in the NDC. So it is high time that leadership actually sit back and reflect on all this happening. And believe me, Ben, no matter how much Ghanaians love the NDC, no matter how much we love the NDC. No one could love the NDC more than President Mahama or ex-President Mahama at this particular moment. So some of these things, some of us expect that he actually steps in. Even a phone call to Governor Dufour will even solve some of these issues. Believe me. Some of this negative reportage is not good for the NDC. Thank you so much. And back to the issue, Ben, with regards to the Financial Stability Fund or the Ghana Financial Stability Fund, I would say it is a good initiative by the government, and I actually applaud the government even with that idea, I must say, because thinking about 1.5 billion, setting it up to help the financial sector is a good thing to talk about. And the government is expecting that by July, it will be operational. So let me make that clear. I'm very excited. I'm very happy. But some of us as experts do have concerns with how government is going about it. Because if you go back to current happenings, due to the domestic debt restructuring, it has cost the financial institutions close to $1.4 billion. That is how much the financial institution, including both domestic, local, and foreign banks, have lost due to the domestic restructuring. So even with regards to the 1.5 billion that government is taking, at least I would say that it will not even be enough to actually help repair the financial sector, but it is still a good plan in place. But the questions that I would like to actually raise so that the finance minister or the finance ministry in general to focus on these issues as such that, at least if you look at the Financial Stability Council that was to be established under the Bank of Ghana regulations, there isn't so much clarity on how the fund is going to operate. When I say clarity, you realize that the bank's losses are in different dimensions. For example, if you take the case of Ghana Commercial Bank, they have lost close to $50.5 million. If you take the case of Standard Chartered Bank, they have lost close to $25.2 million. If you take the case of Zenith Bank Ghana Limited, they have lost close to $127 million. EcoBank have lost almost $1.50 million. So what are the guidelines on assessing these funds by each of these banks that have suffered these losses? At least by now, the government should have made that clear. What would be the criteria in assessing the stability fund? The government should make that clear. Will these banks be charged interest? The government should make that clear. Because there is so much uncertainty or there's so much confusion that even the banks themselves don't seem to get it clear as to how the funds will be set up, how the funds will be assessed, will they be charged interest to assess these funds and all that. The government needs to actually make it clear so that the banking society and all the financial industry players will be able to know what is at stake at this particular point in time. Because if the government hasn't been able to pay you interest on your bonds, and all of a sudden is promising that you'll be able to get $1.5 billion to help you, definitely if you are an industry player, you will be concerned. Is the government lying to me, or the government is actually telling me something for me to believe in? So I believe that the government should come out and demonstrate to Ghanaians, demonstrate to the industry player, even if it means holding meetings with the leadership of the Ghana Banking Association to clarify some of these issues. Believe me, Ben, what I'm telling you is from what we are picking from the ground. But some of these financial experts or the industry players cannot vocalize it as some of us are able to do. So it's a major concern that government really needs to look at. Again, if you look at number two, we had a situation whereby the Bank of Ghana has been consistently accused of printing money, about 42 billion Ghana cedis, to help the 2022 budget of government. And the Bank of Ghana has denied it. So now, with this 500 million that government is promising, where is the money coming from? Where are the funds coming from? Government should be able to come out and tell Ghanaians and tell donor partners, because if government is not able to make that clear, then donor partners themselves will not want to even support the fund. Because if you as a government, you claim that you have 500 million to support it as a commitment, but you are not disclosing the source of the funding. Are you taking the 500 million from the stability, what's the name? From Ghana Education Fund? Are you taking it from NHIS Fund? Where is that 500 million coming from? Through the central bank. So it will make policymakers believe that probably government is going back to print money through the central bank. And the consequences of inflation, the currency depression, will be a major concern again. So Bank of Ghana, through the government, must make this clear. Let us know where the 500 million commitment is going to come from. Thirdly, you realize that the whole proposal is going to be an additional debt. That 1.5 billion is not going to be grant. The development partners are not giving us the 1.5 million as free. The 250 million that is coming from the World Bank is a loan already to Ghana. So other development partners will be giving us loans in addition to the 3 billion that government is seeking. Some of us will be happy that government will make this clarity so that the public, Ghanaians, experts, people who really know what is at stake right now. Because the government speaks as if, the last time I had the finance minister, talking as if the $250 million that just came from the World Bank is like a free grant. That is not the case. If you look at international media, you look at expert reports and all that, it's part of loans that are being contracted. So in a nutshell, the government is not only looking for a 3 billion IMF loan. The government is probably looking for a $4.5 billion loan in a nutshell, with the 1.5 billion helping or geared towards going into the financial stability fund. So that is why I already said, I'm throwing more questions to those at the finance ministry to actually help in digesting some of these issues. Because at the end of the day, government owes it a responsibility in terms of accountability to the people. Government owes it. And government also needs to actually communicate to the citizens, let them know what is at stake. Even development partners really need to know. That will make the government more trustworthy. That will make the government have the confidence that it needs to have, or for people to have the confidence that they want to have in the government. But at this particular point in time, Ben, let's be sure, even if you are a development partner, you wouldn't want to put in any funds towards the Ghana Stability, Financial Stability Fund, because the government itself, or the Ghanaian government itself, is not being truthful with how it's going to raise the 500 million from its coffers.
Get into that. You've taken the wind out of my sail, and that is the exact reason, the precise reason we're having this conversation. And we'll take those matters apart one after another. But let's look at this. So, where will government raise $500 million from? If government had $500 million in its kitty, maybe our economic situation would not be in the doldrums as we find it now. I mean, it's not the solution, but things wouldn't have been, I mean, as bad, I think I should just use it, as it is now. Which would then suggest that we have to seek that as well externally from some other body. For you, what are the feasibilities, if you like, just to pluralize that, of securing this, mopping up those funds internally, and if not internally, you mentioned the GET Fund, among others. Already, we are defunding the GET Fund, so to speak, because allocations to that fund are not being given. It is impacting education. So if we're looking away from some of those and we're going to go external as well, what are the dynamics to take stock of? Even before we talk about the add-on from the IMF. Look at those two angles. Internally, how do we generate that? Externally, how do we get that?
Internally, that is why I already said, almost all the funds that could have helped government to generate it, like the GET Fund and all the other funds, are being depleted currently. So I don't want to come as hard as attacking the Bank of Ghana, but based on the past history, or based on the past, I don't want to say allegations or rumors that was being levied against the Bank of Ghana, then it makes some of us to actually get worried that the only option that Bank of Ghana or the government will be taking is to print more money. That is the only option that will be available to raise the $500 million.
And we've been given some warnings. We've been given some warnings about that.
Exactly, exactly. And already previously, the Bank of Ghana has consistently denied these allegations of printing more money. But if you look at all the dimensions, there is no other way internally the government to raise that 500 million. And as you rightly said, Ben, if the government had that 500 million in its account, probably we wouldn't be in this situation. And believe me, even the 250 million commitment that the World Bank has given, I don't want to say that probably it is not even no longer in the government account. Let's give the benefit of the doubt. But still, it begs to question. You understand? Externally, there was a latest report already on our international revenue. It's almost being depleted. So externally, government has no commitment or no financial strength externally to be able to raise that $500 million. So that is why I am throwing the challenge. I don't want to put words into the Ministry of Finance representative or Ken Oforiatta, who is in charge of the Ministry of Finance. But I, as a Ghanaian, I, as an expert, would like my fellow citizens to know the finance minister should come and tell us. The finance minister should boldly let development partners, not just only Ghanaian citizens, but development partners that it is calling on to support the financial stability fund. The finance minister should let them know where Ghana will get the 500 million from. At least they will be interested too.
Let's look at it from this angle. How then does government pull that rabbit out of the hat, economically speaking? It becomes very tricky a situation, almost bordering on needing magic to pull that rabbit out of the hat. In other words, is there something government has to come clean on as far as its quota, its quotient that it will contribute to this purse is concerned?
Extremely, totally. The government really needs to come out. Because even if the government doesn't come out, at this point in time, there are two scenarios. Like I said, the government will have to print the 500 million, or then we are going to have a situation whereby the government claims that it has $1.5 million, $1.5 billion, but in actuality, the government will only have $1 billion for the fund. Are you getting the scenario?
So let's look at the breakdown again. The plan is to raise $1.5 billion, the equivalent of about 15 billion Ghana cedis. We know it could be more. Now, exactly. 1 billion will come from donors, the international community, and financial partners. The World Bank has already committed 250 million out of that, which means for the part that we say we want externally, we have a surplus of 750 million. How we shall get that, there is no clear roadmap about which institutions, which entities are going to help us get the 750 million that we seek. But looking at the purpose for this entire development, part of which, looking at it categorically, you would be talking about the banks that are going to be affected, those that have participated in the domestic debt exchange program. Let's look at the banks briefly. Most of them posted losses, practically all of them posted losses last year. They find themselves in dire straits. Of course, that is not to say that there is a complete meltdown in our banking system, but they've taken a hard hit. Some of them were even more vulnerable because they were dependent on bonds by government, and now those have proven problematic. What would you say is the state of the bonds? Does it warrant this fund in the first place?
Well, for the bonds that resulted in all this cleanup, already some of us, we spoke against the domestic exchange program, and I even said it was going to lead to a banking crisis. People called me pessimist, whatever, at that point in time. But fast forward, that is exactly what we are seeing now. We are heading into a banking crisis. Believe it or not, we are heading into a banking crisis.
We're heading into a banking crisis.
Of course, yes. Ghana Commercial Bank, since 1993, they haven't posted losses. Since 1993, you could go and check their record. And 2022, they are reporting a loss of 50 billion and above dollars, not even Ghana cedis. So that tells you that, Ben, let me say that we unfortunately, right, we have a situation whereby these industry players are not comfortably speaking out. We all know the sort of country we have, realistically. Politics has come to play so much role that if you speak out, you are either NDC or MPP. So a lot of the industry players that have been speaking are silent, but they are currently suffering this particular problem I'm talking of. You understand? If government is not able to help by July, right, gradually we'll get into a situation whereby some of the banks will start closing down branches. And we will give particular reasons for that. They may not end up collapsing entirely, but gradually it will hit them. Because a lot of them had their investment in these bonds. So let's say a bank had investment that they were supposed to be earning 19% interest. All of a sudden, with the restructuring, government is giving them around 8% thereabouts. So definitely they are taking huge losses. And believe me, even with the international reportage, what happened in Ghana is even affecting the Nigerian economy, because a lot of the Nigerian banks in Ghana are also taking losses, like the UBAs, the Zenith Bank, and all that. So it's not only that Ghana caused the problem for Ghana itself, but our neighboring Nigeria also is suffering the domestic exchange program that Ghana did.
Let's look at, so looking at this breakdown, first of all, you say another banking crisis is looming. How long do you think it will take before this bites? Looking at the returns or the results that these banks have been posting, we know they have posted losses, but for each, or should we say, to each his own. Looking at the dynamics,
Exactly.
how soon, if things are not dealt with, how soon could we see this? You mentioned that by July, if government is not able to do something to intervene in a way, we could be in dire straits. So how soon do you think this could happen?
I would say as soon as possible. Believe me, because if you speak with industry players, they will tell you
You're saying
that
we're in the midst of a crisis, that the crisis
we
could
are,
happen
we
at
are in
any
the
time.
midst of crisis. Of course, we are in the midst of crisis, but the government is suppressing the crisis. And then with every crisis, no matter how you suppress it, it will get to a point you cannot suppress it any longer. It's just the same way government was telling that we are not going to IMF, we are not going to IMF, we won't go to IMF, because government was trying to suppress the crisis. But it got to a point that the crisis can no longer be contained. So government had to finally go to IMF. That is the same thing happening within the banking crisis, the banking sector. If government is not able to get that 1.5 billion stability fund set up by the July deadline that is, not the deadline, but the July that is saying, we should expect that some of these banks will start collapsing. They will start laying their workers off because they wouldn't be able to keep paying the salaries of these workers without getting the investment that they did in those bonds. You understand? So the financial stability fund is a way of cushioning the banks. Okay, whatever losses that you had made, probably even if you cannot recover all of it back, but at least you can get some back. So, for example, maybe GCB is losing about $50 billion, even if they can't get it back, but at least the government is able to come in through the fund and they could even access 40 billion, it will go back into working capital. So, if there's nothing for them to rely on, what do you expect to happen? When even in the economy there is no money for depositors to put to the bank. Are you following the situation we're facing right now? Because people are not putting monies into the banks right now. Banks are calling customers to even come and deposit money. So it's basically telling you that there's nothing in their coffers to operate with. How will they keep up paying salaries? Then let's ask Ghanaians look at it as a collective problem, and not just maybe the banks are this, the banks are that. It is not like that. If some of them come to speak out right now, politicians will descend on them, so they are quiet. But the industry is really taking a big hit right now. The banking industry or the banking sector in Ghana is taking a big hit right now.
You're telling me that, look, we need those 1.5 billion by July. If not, we'll start facing a banking crisis.
Definitely, we will.
Let's
Give it by the end of the year. Probably your friend will be laid off from the bank. My friends will be laid off from the bank.
So
Yes.
that is a crucial point you make. But just to confirm, did you say the Bank of Ghana had never posted losses since you were referring to the Bank of? Were you referring to the Ghana Commercial Bank? Because
Yes.
for a moment I think I heard you say the Bank of Ghana, and I was
No,
asking
Ghana
myself, wait,
Commercial
how
Bank.
can that?
Yes.
Okay,
Ghana
so
Commercial Bank.
what we now call GCB Bank, right?
GCB Bank, exactly.
And did you say $50 billion?
Yes, you could check Bloomberg. Yes, it's been reported. You could check Bloomberg. $50.5 million.
You meant $1 million, not billion.
Yes, $50.5 million.
Exactly. So I had to confirm that as well, because I thought I'd heard million, and I felt that was, if it were $1 billion, then even the package we're getting from the IMF would not suffice. So $50 million loss. How much of a dent is that going to do? Because we all know the GCB Bank, what role it plays in our monetary or fiscal system in the country, its ties to the central bank and everything. So if the GCB Bank is incurring losses of $50 million, and that in itself has support from the state, then what can we expect from the private, banks? We have those that are very well developed. They've been there for about a century and more. We know them. I don't want to mention names. But look at the other ones. You mentioned those from Nigeria. What does that mean for them? And even if we get the 1.5 billion, what would be the impact on these banks in the next year, 2 years, 5 years? What is your forecast?
The 1.5 billion, that is why, based on my forecast, I've already told you, it will not even be enough to sustain the banks. It wouldn't be enough. Believe me, and if you look at what Bloomberg reported, right, since 1993 to date, Ghana Commercial Bank hasn't suffered this loss. You could check Bloomberg, you understand. The Nigerian banks like Zenith Bank Ghana, they suffered more than $100 million. United Bank for Africa, they suffered more than $30 million. EcoBank Ghana Limited, they incurred about $149 million. The data speaks for itself. Ben, that is why I already told you that these industry players, they themselves don't want to come out and speak because of the polarization of our economy
Quick
or our
one.
system.
Quick one. You talk about the polarization, but even these figures that you're mentioning, and we've cited some of them, 100 million, Zenith Bank,
Yeah.
EcoBank, 149 million.
Yeah.
If you tally them, does that mean we're getting even over the threshold of 1.5 billion, which would mean then that some would, at some point,
Yeah.
have to either merge again or fold up?
Exactly. So based on the data that came out, the losses are close to 1.4 billion. So
1.4 billion.
yes, it's close to 1.4 billion. That is what the reports are saying based on the data that is out. But $1.4 billion is almost close to $1.5 billion. You understand? So you have the case whereby, let's say, some of these Nigerian banks, if they are not able to, continue operation, or they are not able to sustain without any government support, they may end up pulling out. But like I said, we don't expect that it will just all happen at once like that. At least gradually, they will take the hit, including the Ghanaian banks. And you cannot rule out mergers as well. Probably maybe some banks may merge, but that is also a different subject matter for another day. But currently, I as a citizen or I as a concerned Ghanaian will actually hope that the government is not playing with this 1.5 billion fund it is talking of. Like, it is not just another rhetoric that the government is putting in place. But in all honesty, I am hoping that the government is actually committed in getting those funds to help these banks. Because believe me, there will be a domino effect. There will be so much trickle down effect coming into place if these banks are not able to be sustained. As of now, like I'm saying, banks are calling customers. You could do a random market survey. Banks are calling customers to come and deposit money because they don't have funds to operate with. That is the situation we are facing now. And the economy being so hard to, people don't even have those monies to even take to the banks to save.
Not to mention the fact that for those who are on facilities, the banks are being more ruthless because,
Exactly.
they must keep their heads above water.
Above water. So with such an economy, only the government assistance could come in to keep these banks in operation. Again, I'll say that the government, that is what I already said, the government is, even with that initiative or that thinking to set up the fund, that is a good initiative. And I applaud the government. I wouldn't lie about that. You understand? But let's go beyond the rhetoric and put it into action. And then, like I said, if government comes out today and just announce that, okay, government is getting 500 million from this fund or that fund into the stabilization fund, development partners will definitely follow suit. But so far, since December all the way to now, have you noticed that it is only the World Bank that have made that 250 million commitment? No development partner has made any commitment.
What does it say about trust in our economic system? What does it say
Because
about that?
because if the government doesn't show the action, how do you expect the partners to trust you enough to make commitment? You understand? I'll let leadership by example. Some of us believe that if the government comes out today and announce that, okay, government has pulled out 500 million from so and so fund into the Ghana Stabilization Fund, there's going to be hope. Development partners will begin to have some confidence in the government and they will follow suit with the remaining 750 million that we are having. But currently, it is like the government is trying to set a trap. Let's say, okay, you know what? I'm looking for 1,500 Ghana cedis, but I already have 500 in my account. So can you give me the remaining 1,000. Then they give you the remaining 1,000, and there's nothing in your account. So in actuality, you have 1,000, but you report in your books you have 1,500.
So
So
this is like you feel
coming.
this is economic baiting just to get the external bodies to assist
Just
us
to get
while
the
we
external.
ourselves. But that's a dangerous game to play.
But currently, that is how it looks like because there isn't no commitment from the government itself. Government is not showing that commitment of the 500 million.
Let's
Up to now, it's just a commitment. No money is coming into the fund.
let's
May, June, July. We are talking of how many more months? 2 to 3 months. And government is still showing commitment without any actual action.
let's take a look at how the fund will be managed when it is set up. The Bank of Ghana will be at the helm. It will use unique operational guidelines, which are still being developed by the council. I find that a bit problematic, but we're also told that regulators will assess the impact on a regular basis and quickly address evolving risks in order to safeguard financial stability as far as the banks are concerned. What sort of approach do you feel the Bank of Ghana should use in managing this fund once it is set up? And let's look at the other dynamic. Let's assume all these entities give us the 1 billion that we seek, and somehow we are not able to come up with the 500 million that we claim we're going to raise. How should we manage that situation?
So let's take the first scenario. If at the end of the day we only have 1 billion in our accounts, unless I would expect more clarity on how those funds will be dispersed to these affected banks. Because if one bank suffered more loss than the other banks, I think it is fair enough to distribute the funds based on their losses, at least based on ratio, based on whatever percentages. Again, when it comes to interest rate, at least the government should be fair enough to these banks, at least not to charge them interest that will be too exorbitant. Again, because I am very sure that the government is not going to let them access the funds for free. With the current economic situation that we are, government may want to charge them at this point in time. So at least anything between 1 to 1.5% wouldn't be bad, or even less than that, because you are already having these banks in this situation. Charging them another higher interest to access these funds wouldn't be to their benefit. So at least government should be more considerate if actually it's able to get the $1 billion so that these funds will get into proper usage by these banks.
Right. I want us to...
If we have a situation whereby the Bank of Ghana is again printing money, then it will not be good for the economy. For that one included, yeah.
So printing money shouldn't be an option in terms of raising the $500 million.
Printing money shouldn't be an option because already, what is the inflation rate for March? 45%, right?
It's now down to about 41.2%.
Yeah, February was around 52.8%. So if you print more money, you'll be causing inflation again. You'll be causing currency depreciation and all that. Again, even if, let's just say, Ben, even if the inflation rate is 30%, right? I'm just saying, even if it drops down to 30%, go back to 2016, December 2016, when we had an inflation rate of 15.4%. So the inflation rate that we are experiencing is still high. Government must sit up with some of its action.
Let's look at that point you just raised, printing money. If we did that, what would the impact be on our currency? And of course, it has a spillover on the economy. Professor Steve Hank, for example, has been talking about a currency board. In recent times, I've seen posts of his on the Ghanaian economy, even contesting our inflationary levels. But that's a separate conversation. If we go ahead to print money, as the government seems to suggest, we can raise $500 million. Realistically, when we look through the market, our external options are very limited. Internally, they are practically non-existent. So we may have to do that. If we did, what would be the impact on our currency? And what do you think about Steve Hank and his continuous calls for a currency board to be set up?
I don't think there will be any problem setting up a currency board to actually help with the depreciation of the currency. In all honesty, our currency since I could say since 2016 or the date, based on the depreciation, more than 50%. That is not helping at all. And the more these sort of money printing goes on behind the scenes, the more you expect your currency value to go down. But like again, I'm saying that the Bank of Ghana had denied all those allegations. So they are just stories, you know, until they confirm it, let's just take it as allegations. But everything boils down to the fact that there has been some printing of money behind the scenes. So I totally support any currency board that will be put in place, you know, to be able to regulate some of these things. Because the way the Ghanaian economy is set up, you go to even Ben, if you get up and go to market right now, they'll tell you that the dollar is high. So because of that, prices will be high, no matter what. So whether we like it or not, the dollar has an effect on our economy. So if you're able to at least help with the stability of our currency, then we should be able to have at least consistency in prices because it all contributes to how our markets are being regulated. So I will definitely support any currency board that is being put in place, either by this government or the next government. That is totally fine. It will help to be able to streamline some of these stuff that is happening.
Now, let's look at the losses that the banks posted. Like you have already mentioned, the GCB Bank posting a loss of 593.4 million Ghana cedis, the equivalent of about $50.5 million in net losses. Then we have Standard Chartered Bank Limited, 297.8 million cedis. And then you have, banks operating in West Africa's second largest economy, taking a hit, which is our economy, taking a hit of about $1.4 billion. There are so many entities, including the Nigerian entities in Ghana, that have also got close to the point of capitulation on the back of the sums they have lost. If you put all of that into perspective, and then you look at the fact that we're trying to raise 1 billion or maybe even 1.5 billion from external sources. And I'm sure you understand why I say maybe even 1.5 billion, because we still do not know where the 500 million is coming from. So let's say we're seeking 3 billion from the IMF, an extra 1 billion or an extra 1.5 billion. That would bring us to about a maximum of $4.5 billion. Now, if we get the 500 million from the Bank of Ghana, no matter the denials, I've seen too much in this space to think anything is impossible. If we did that, it would have its effect on the economy. And interestingly, why we're even going to get this 1.5 billion is on the back of the DDEP, which itself has created the situation we're in. So I really don't, it's quite a conundrum, isn't it? I mean, is there any way we win in this situation? Because it appears, okay, so you had a problem. To resolve the problem, you had to go to the IMF. To secure funding from the IMF, you had to conduct this domestic debt exchange. You've not even completed the external leg of it with China and the rest. Now, on the back of that same DDEP, you're going to need an extra 1.5 billion. The solution comes with a whole lot more cost. How does Ghana win in all of this?
Yeah, so Ben, that is why I was recalling you back to even before the DDP happened, right? We came out, I was basically in the news speaking against it, telling government that this is going to have a dire impact on the economy. But I was called a pessimist and all kinds of names, or anti-government and all kinds of names. You see, if you are running an economy like a circle, it's like you going forward, you going backwards kind of scenario, without any sense of direction. Definitely, this is what is going to happen. From day one, you realize what the government did with the e-levy. The e-levy collapsed businesses. I spoke against that. The government didn't listen. But at the end of the e-levy, people who had small-scale businesses ended up losing. So in the first place, that is a hit on the economy. You are trying to raise funds or you are trying to mobilize revenue, but you are already affecting businesses in your economy. How do you raise that revenue? It doesn't make economic sense. I spoke against that. The government went ahead and did that. Number two, you came back again with domestic debt restructuring program. I and many other experts spoke against it. I'm like, if you do this, at the end of the day, you are going to cripple small scale business. You are going to affect your banks. The government didn't listen and went ahead with it, right? The banks are taking the losses now. Then you are back again claiming that you support them with 1.5 billion. So that is why I said it's like we are running our situation in a circle, like a rat race, without any end to it.
Let me ask you if, go ahead with the point you're about to make.
And like, to be honest, until the government really sets up and see what priorities as a country we need, believe me, we'll keep going in this race. And it's not only MPP. Let's just say whatever government comes in, if we don't get our priorities right, we'll keep going around in this sector. Go to IMF, take money, put in policies that will collapse the economy. You go to IMF, take money, come to pretend you are building it. By the time you see you are going back to IMF, this is our 18th IMF since 1966.
Do hold for me, Dr. Idrisu. Do hold for me.
Right.
Let me bring in Richmond Etiahene. He is a banking consultant. He joins the conversation. Doc, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir. Good morning to your cherished listeners.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us. We know this morning it's been a bit hectic for you. We're grateful that you've made the time. You've missed a chunk of the conversation, but I'm just going to try to encapsulate a lot of what we've discussed and throw them back at you. 1.5 billion, we claim we're going to be able to raise on our own $500 million for this stability fund. 1 billion is expected to be raised from our international, donors, the international community, financial partners, among others. Already, the World Bank has given us 250 million that we're going to put in our kitty. That leaves a gap of $750 million. How do we manage the situation? Some have suggested that we may have to print more money, fall again on the Bank of Ghana in a near suicidal economic situation, because that would also have spin-off effects on our economy. We won $3 billion from the IMF. On the back of that, we had to conduct the DDEP. The DDEP has led to another cost of $1.5 billion. I'm sure you get my drift. It appears this is becoming one problem layered by another problem, layered by another problem. What are the things we have to do? Look at the banks. They are posting never before seen losses. The Ghana GCB Bank has not posted losses since 1993. We're seeing them posting over $50 million in losses. How do you view all of this, and what should we be doing to avert another banking crisis?
Thank you very much. I think it's something that I have been writing on consistently since ever they thought about the DDE in December 6th. I put up a paper and I told them the implications of the DDE. I told them there was going to be a solvency crisis, liquidity crisis. But, Ben, from where you're sitting, you know that this country, when you want to speak the truth, you become the only Lone Ranger. And I have been going on and on and on and doing so many papers and using so many models to talk about these as the first stability fund. We are replicating what happened in Jamaica in 2010. It is a contingent measure that is supposed to address the negative impact of DDE. That was what it is all about. The negative impact is about solvency and liquidity. Unfortunately, this project or this fund, I believe, should have even started in earnest before the DDE was done, because the consequences is quite enormous. You're only talking about banks in losses and what have you, impairment. That is not the story. The story doesn't end there. The story doesn't end there. We have another year to come, which this GDE would have effect. So now that we want to establish we wanted to establish this Financial Stability Fund, I believe we should have thought about the implications before even we started the project. For the banks, they may not have immediate rippling effect. But when you go to the security and fund managers and insurance that have signed on, currently they are facing liquidity challenges because people walk in and they need their money and there is nowhere to get your money from. Now we have borrowed and borrowed. Now we're going back to the World Bank amount you're talking about. It's commitment. It's not supposed to. It won't come in until September. We should get it clear. It is not a fund that is available. It is a commitment given to us that by September we're going to get $250 million. So now it beholds on us. Printing money should be completely out. It is one of the problems that we are facing currently with high inflation. And you know the story. After printing so much money, the inflation is sitting on our head. And now we are trying to use inflation targeting, whatever methodology to bring inflation. When we have created a problem, once you finance something that does not exist, you create inflation. And that is, so for me, where I'm coming from, I don't even want to hear about Bank of Ghana printing money. And I'm very glad that they themselves, the Bank of Ghana and the ministry and the World Bank, IMF, are saying it's zero financing. It is critical we need the money, but the last thing we should do is to print more money. The question is, how do we get the balance?
And that is exactly what I was about to ask you. You asked yourself, how do we get the 500 million?
I'm going to tell you something that we could have done and be able not to struggle with even with the 3 billion. I'm making a reference to a World Bank document that's in front of me. Consistently, even post-COVID, we received remittances, international remittance of 3.8 billion. After that, we marked to 4.5 billion. 2022, 4.7 billion. It is far more exceedingly above the money that we are even looking at. How have we treated these remittances? As a country, how have we treated this? Countries like even Bangladesh and the country that is suffering like us, Sri Lanka, has packaged remittances, international remittances, such that it impacts on the reserves of the economy. I'm sorry. What have we done? Number two, if we really want to go there, I think we have enough resources in this country to say that we can generate the mining companies. Let me give you a simple example. We can go and renegotiate with the mining companies and even some of the telecos. I don't want to mention their names. They are cash cow. We call it cash cow. They are foreign currency cash cow. We can go and sit down with them and tell them that if the contract was even 70-30, we would like you to do it, say 60-40 for us. Give us 10% of your money to enable us to shore up this funding. We can't do it. You see, we need to think through when the challenges come. It shouldn't be sacrosanct to few people who think they know all. Let us go back to the mining company. We have an existing contract with them. The contract maybe is 80-20. Let us ask them, ladies and gentlemen, we are in crisis. We want us to help us, to lend us some money, and we structure your repayment through your mining proceeds. I don't think they'll be too hard on us. They won't be too hard. Because if we go down, we go down with them, especially the financial sector. Because they also have to use the financial sector in payment and settlement of what have you. So I think we can sit down, as other people have been saying. We need to think through, whenever there are challenges, we need to be very innovative. And innovative comes from so many angles. Bring these people together, let them think through, let us jaw and help the nation. Because this thing has been going on. When the GDE started, anybody who spoke not for the GDE, became an albatross. I can tell you, Ben, those of us who have been writing papers on it, we have so many names and so many callings. But you see, when
calls from whom?
Ben, when you speak the truth, you speak it to the last. And at least I have been vindicated. And Bloomberg this morning has confirmed the work that I did. That the losses are quite enormous. We should be very innovative. And I'm saying that let us go to the cash cows. There are cash cows in this country. I can tell you, you know the people I'm talking about. Let us sit down with them. Oh, brothers, we know we are in challenges. Can we give us up $500 million so that we structure your agreement in such a way that by the end of it, 2 years or 1 year, you get money back, so that we can cushion the financial sector, which is the base of the economic recovery. If the financial sector go down, there's not going to be economic recovery.
And speaking...
That's my thinking, that it has come for a time to let us be innovative and explore other people's knowledge so that we can bring the country to a level where it will help us then.
You talk about if the financial sector goes down. Of course, if it goes down the sink, then we all sink with it because our financial system is constructed around it. But you look at the different dynamics, the losses that are being posted. Look at the GCB Bank, for example, since 1993, first time posting losses, and a gargantuan one at that, over $50 million. It spreads across even to the most established banks that we have in the country. I'll put this hard question to you. Is a banking sector crisis, another banking sector crisis, looming large, especially if we do not get the $1.5 billion that we are looking at? The approximation is that the losses posted by the banks sum up to about $1.4 billion. Now, if that be the case, especially if we do not get the $1.5 billion we're looking for, could we have a banking sector crisis, another one on our hands?
I think, Ben, you have answered your question. The question is if we do not get it, then we are almost in crisis. I have to be blunt. And this is even a temporary measure. What about 2023, when the other losses are captured? So, the earlier we guided our loins to be able to resolve this, the better for us. And I've given you one option. There are good mining companies in this country. Sit down with them. Tell them, we are in terrible mess. Can't you do something to structure $500 million for us to support the sector, which is the bane of our recovery? I don't think they will find it very difficult. But you see, you need to, Ben, you need to have innovative minds. People who think beyond the normal traditional thinking.
Dr. Etienne, are you suggesting, Doc, if you
forward, we're not going to go well, we're not going to achieve what we want to achieve.
Doc, are you suggesting that so far we've not been innovative in our approach after all the things we have been doing? And are you suggesting that for you, we should get in touch with these mining entities, big mining entities? I don't want to mention their names, but that is how we can raise these $500 million we need to back up the $1 billion from the international front?
Yes, Ben, what I'm saying is that even not even only the mining companies, I won't mention the telecos, they are cash cows. Let me repeat, cash cow, especially some of the telecos. $500 million, I don't think would crash them. We need to structure it in such a way that we'll get the inflows and we'll be able to reschedule our payments over a year or two to pay them. And if we do that and we're able to secure it, we'll be able to support the sector. But as the way we are going, we're always looking for donor. World Bank has given you 250. I don't know how much the Euro people are going to give you. And if you look at Britain, for instance, it's not in a very good state. I don't see how they can also support. You're always looking for somebody somewhere to come and help you. We need to be very innovative in developing our own strategy, like people call homegrown knowledge, so that we'll be able to solve it. If we come together and we use our connections, speaking to these people, these companies that we have had, I think we'll be able to we'll be able to solve the problem quite easily.
Gentlemen, to cap off the conversation, I'll put this one question to both of you, and I'll start with you, Dr. Etiahene, because of how your morning has been, and then we can cap off the conversation. Now, the DDEP, after all the pain we have faced, and with pensioner bondholders still picketing at the Ministry of Finance, after all the pain we have faced and still are facing as a people, it has only shaved off 1% in terms of our debt to GDP comparative. Now, as we consider this new fund, we're looking at an extra 1.5 billion. We still do not know where the 500 million will come from, but whatever way, it's likely going to be some form of loan, like you suggested, Dr. Etiahene, maybe from the banks, maybe from the mining companies, telcos, maybe from even oil companies. Add that to the 3 billion expected from the IMF, that's 4.5 billion. What do you think, how much of a dent is all of this going to make in our debt stock? You know, there have been projections by the IMF about our GDP situation and all of that and the dynamics, but 4.5 billion and what we've seen with the DDEP, what could be the impact on our debt stock? I'll start with you, Dr. Etiahene.
Thank you very much once again. I think the debt impact is going to be high. It's not going. You see, they have projected it to be 55 by 2028. But when you start on a baseline of over 100, it's not going to be easy for you to come to 2020, 55 in 2028. Because we are in a position that we have to borrow and borrow and borrow. And then we will now come back into the situation again. Then what I would have said, and I want to tell the people, is that originally we should have actually think through thoroughly and look at the options. There are other options, and the other options should have been thought through critically, evaluated, models used, stress testing done, to see which one would minimize. Because if you see the participation, the domestic debt is 193 billion, and you only score about, according to people, it's about 87 or 90. We still have over 100 billion unstructured, and the interests are going up. The interests are being paid at 19.3 and what have you. So we are in a crisis. We are in a crisis. But the question is that it is not something we cannot solve. Let us think together. Let us not make it as if the country is just for a certain group of people. It's a country that we all belong to. I have been here since the PAMSCA, the Economic Recovery 1, 2, since up, what have you. I've been through it, and I'm talking about that. If we come together, this problem, with the debt up, this problem, we can be able to bring it to a certain acceptable level in the years ahead.
Doc, we're grateful, immensely grateful for your time this morning. And we'll be tapping from your font of wisdom as time goes on. Dr. Richmond Etiahene is a banking consultant. He joined us for the conversation. We still have Dr. Saad Idrisu. You have the final take on that same matter.
Well, thank you, Ben. Like I said before, let's just pray and hope that the government will be able to raise the $1.5 billion to support the financial sector. If not, banking crisis is looming. Then again, the second thing is that if government is not able to, that is what I said, if, unless government should have plan B, let me put it that way, because we can't just rely on the financial stability fund. If the donor partners don't put in the commitment, if government itself is not able to put in the $500 million commitment, unless there should be another plan how to be able to help the financial sector, even if it means, extending some capital requirement issues, or, just doing something. But we shouldn't just put all our hope on the financial stability fund. That is all I will have to say.
Dr. Idrisu, we're grateful for your time. Dr. Saad Idrisu is economist, Louisiana Economic Development. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Well, still to come on the AM show, two crucial issues we're going to be looking at. One of them has to do with the latest inflationary figures. Now, year on year, inflation fell for the fourth month running to 41.2% in April 2023, from 45% in the third month of the year, March. Now, this extends the disinflationary process, so to speak, since January 2023. It's been 4 months running. But what exactly does this mean? We'll bring you those dynamics after the break.